I'm a nerd.
Nerds.
Nerds.
Nerds!
I'm not kissing a nerd.
What is a nerd?
Nerd! Holy crap, are we nerdy?
Welcome, Nerdables, to episode 123. This week we're going to do our Deadpool review, and later in the show, Kris is going to take over to run us through DC's big Rebirth. Joining me this week are Kris, Mikey, Ethan, and Sebastian will be showing up when the LA traffic lets him through. So, Deadpool. I guess we'll start off right at saying spoilers.
We should start off with the fact that this is a great number for the show. It's 1, 2, 3. It's always awesome like that. It's all numerical sequence.
What? Oh, 1, 2, 3?
It won't happen
Yes.
until we get 2, 3, and we get to 234.
That's correct.
I know it's correct. It's math. It's crazy.
Which,
awesome.
we've been doing really good because we're doing a weekly show. Last week we obviously took off because it was Valentine's Day. And
We didn't take off because it was Valentine's Day. We took off because you weren't here, and none of us know how to work any of this fucking equipment, and none of us can put it on the... I was talking to Sebastian about it, and he's like, well, if we could have recorded on my iPhone, just you and me, and we could have put it up, except we don't have any of the passwords or stuff to put stuff up. So that's something we need to fix in the next couple of weeks, and teach Sebastian how to put it up, and that way, if for some reason none of us is here, at least we can do a short enough show to get up every week.
That's true.
Because we wouldn't want that one fan that listens to our show miss a week.
Wait, well, why weren't
Because
they
Eric
on?
did say, like, a Monday morning, he's like, you guys are really slow putting this up. Like, oh, we didn't do one this week. And he just sent back, like, slackers.
Oh, wow. At least Eric's listening to it. I'm pretty impressed with that.
Eric's listening to it.
But is that because of you, or is it because...
No, he's listening to it because he wants to hear you two of us yell at each other.
That's the one fan we have.
Well, we have one in Ohio, and
I think there's one in, like, Turkey or something.
Yeah, and there's
Bangladesh, and
it's weird the places that we
Bezistan.
have people. I just wish
I still think people are trying to learn English through our show. Like, no one else.
I feel bad for them.
No one listens.
Rudimentary
No one else
English.
listens to show. I listen to show. I learned things like
Fuck you.
racist. Steven fucking Spielberg. This is his name. Yes, he's a good director.
Well, then I'm going to put this out there. I wish people would at least acknowledge and give us some kind of comment. We did have one on the last episode.
We've been doing it. Did we?
Yeah,
Was it your mom?
It was on SoundCloud. It was actually, and they put.
Was it someone we didn't know?
Yeah,
That's a first.
I know. I was really surprised.
Yeah, usually it's your mom, who also happens to be Ethan's girlfriend. But
Don't hit your head with the microphone. We don't need to
Goodness.
lose another one.
it's okay. It could be worse, bro.
Goodness.
Didn't you guys go to Disneyland together or something like that?
Yeah, they drove down together.
Sweet.
It's just because Rich didn't want to be in the car with his mom.
Did you spend a night in the same room? That
No,
night?
we didn't.
Man, you made her sleep in a separate room, even though you two are...
Look at us. We're like Deadpool. We're breaking the fourth wall. But then again, we can break the fourth wall with the fourth wall.
It's a podcast. It's always breaking
Breaking the fourth wall.
We're always addressing the audience that's there.
I guess so. Yeah. I was
Do
trying.
you know how a podcast works?
I do know
Oh,
how
okay.
podcasts work. After 123,
Do you know how
I hope the hell I know.
Well, you don't know how the equipment works after 123 episodes, so...
I was trying to make it better because I always have this hiss in my ear that I never can.
Well, I just remember when you
That's
first
just
made this
Cobra
box. Yeah.
listening to you.
Just first made the box, it was like, I'll never have to adjust anything again. And it actually takes us longer to set up than it did before you had the fucking box.
Let's just put it this way. Don't fix anything else. It's working. It's fine. Don't try to do anything different.
Well, that was the point. Was the box supposed to come out? We're going to plug everything in. Stalling for time so that Sebastian can give us his Deadpool review. The box is supposed to come out. We're supposed to plug the mics in, and we're done, and we go. Every week. It takes 2.5 hours to get the mics working.
So, anyways, Kris, what did you think of Deadpool?
I thought it was Deadpool-tastic.
Deadpool-tastic. That's Chris's official review.
That's the official review. I thought you were going to talk about numbers.
I am. I'm going to talk about numbers, but I wanted to see what everybody thought of it first. Did it live up to everything you expected for a movie?
I didn't expect much of it, so yeah. No, I wasn't that person that was like super, super excited for it. I was hoping it would be good and it would be fun, and that's what it was. It was fun, it was good, it was funny. I thought they did a good job of having the humor not be super slapstick.
Yes.
The physical humor was based off of his condition.
Yes.
And then, Colossus getting knocked around or whatever.
I was also glad that they had him be that way before he was actually Deadpool.
Yeah.
I was worried
Like it
that
wasn't
was
a change in his psyche.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the way the character was originally kind of, once that backstory came.
I have
came
one
through.
critique about the movie, though.
The fact that they keep talking about Rob Liefeld, even though nothing in that film is actually Rob's work. It's all Joe Casey's work.
Yeah, and then Liefeld was in it.
Yeah, that's you want to get to the rant part of it. We'll go through that. But it was really a lot of fun. The choreography in it was fantastic.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It was really, really well done. I thought the we'll talk about budgets and stuff later. I thought the limitations actually helped them, and the humor was just enough. As I said beforehand, I was afraid that it was going to be 2.5 hours of, or 2 hours of him, talking to the audience,
Right.
and stuff like that. And it wasn't. There's a moment or two, just like in the comic. Every few issues, he'll do something like that. It was just enough. I thought they showed a lot of restraint
Yes.
for what you can do with that character, and didn't make it so incredibly over the top. And the other characters around him were done really well.
Yes.
I'm a big Colossus fan, so I don't like this incarnation of Colossus as Colossus. But in terms of a character, it was fine. For me personally, as a huge Colossus fan, I'm like, great, the big dumb.
It works for this movie.
Yeah, it works for the movie.
Right.
So that part was fine.
Well, see, that's what I was kind of wondering is if it's Deadpool making Colossus look dumb instead of making because
it's just the way that
almost
they
was a
decided
caricature of himself.
to use Colossus. Yeah, and that kind of.
Did you like the way the CG was for him?
I thought it was fine. I mean, it was.
At times, he looked like clay.
I thought
a
the
little
best
bit,
decision that they made was to make the metal like a matte finish
Yes.
instead of
Yeah.
shiny.
Yeah.
Because that's where it gets really tough. They wouldn't have had the budget to do it, because if you make it shiny, you have to put the reflections in it and everything to make it look realistic.
That's what Colossus is anyway, a matte. So.
Well, he's supposed to be shiny. Supposed to.
Yeah, but even in the old comics,
He's
it's
been in
just,
for whatever different terms. He's been shiny. He's been matte. Whatever.
Yeah.
He's been reflective and kind of a chrome. He's been a dull matte. He looked his uniform looked more out of the Ultimate X-Men line.
Yes.
At
Yeah,
the
it
time.
did.
But no, it was fine, and I thought they did a good job with Mega Teenage Sonic Warhead, whatever, in her lines, and the fact that they didn't overdo the. She's
Teen
unafflicted
angst
and
type
teen
thing.
angst and whatever.
Oh,
it was just
I loved
enough.
he set her up.
But that's
for-
what I mean. It was nice and it was there, but it wasn't overpowering. You didn't
Yeah.
have to wait until the entire film before she cracked a smile.
Right.
It was just something like she laughs at him. She's okay. She says, "You're cool" or whatever towards the end. So no, I thought it was a really good movie because it didn't go too far. It went just far enough.
Well, see, my biggest fear was the marketing for it has been so good. They've done such a great job with putting it out there and staying true to the character. And whether it's Ryan Reynolds in the costume or not during it, you can't tell a difference between that Deadpool and the one that was in the movie, and it carries over nicely to it.
I can't even imagine he was in the costume actually even that long, because that is definitely a performer. Because once you're in that costume that has no
Right.
it has no facial expression whatsoever, it's all in the movement, so everything has to be exaggerated.
Yes.
The way he moves his head when he talks and flops his head back and forth, and he's got to express the emotion through the way that he's moving his head, the way he's flopping his hands or whatever. It'd be interesting to know how often Ryan Reynolds was actually in the suit,
Probably
and how often it's a character performer.
the non-action parts.
Yeah.
Maybe,
him.
yeah.
He'd
Where
maybe
there was a lot of
put a
motion,
stuntman
it
or
would've been,
something
yeah.
for
Right.
doing-
But again, I mean, he's not. It also depends on what kind of training he's had. If he hasn't been trained as like basically a performer, a circus performer, a mime, or those type of things,
But
those are the type
also-
of movements that you're seeing in that character.
He wasn't
was
Blade
a-
3, so he got trained somewhat a while ago.
Well, no, this was a movie that he's been wanting to make for 10 years. So, I mean, like, if you think about it, someone who's so passionate about it, I think he would have spent the time to actually, get all that down.
Yes, and why has he been wanting to do this for 10 years? Because he
Because
wanted
of-
to redeem himself for the
Yeah.
original.
Well, it's funny, even after
Well,
that,
he's redeeming himself. I think he wanted to redeem that.
I was
not
telling-
something redeeming that character.
I think I was telling Mikey and Chris, I don't know if it was Chris, I think it was just Mikey, that he said, I waited 10 years to make this film. As soon as they finished wrapping on the movie, he just walked off set with the suit on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the costume designer's like, hey, did you want to change? And he's like, nope, I'm good. And just kept walking.
Did you
Also,
see
to
the
point out that Ryan Reynolds has been in 3 separate comic book franchises.
Yeah.
He was in Blade,
Yes.
which everyone forgets.
Blade
He's Green
3.
Lantern and Deadpool. So it's like, Ryan Reynolds is just all over for the comic.
And
map.
well, and the funny thing is, people would say Blade 3 was horrible, Green Lantern was abysmal, and
was what?
I heard a dismal.
What is abysmal?
I said abysmal. I think
What is
whatever. And thirdly,
abysmal?
abysmal is what I was
Here's
trying
Or
to
the,
say.
the funny thing is,
Divisible.
though, that Rich owns it.
Green
What,
Lantern.
abysmal?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
He also not only does he own it, but he used to watch it on HBO all the time.
a couple of times.
all the time.
I like Ryan Reynolds.
Good for you.
I've
There's-
liked Ryan Reynolds since he
Lot of
was
Ryan
in
Reynolds.
Two
Plenty
Guys,
of-
a Girl, and a Pizza Place.
There's plenty of other movies that Ryan Reynolds is in that are a lot better than Green
Yeah,
Lantern.
no.
Well,
most
of
most
course,
of the movies he's-
if you ask Deadpool will tell you every movie that Ryan Reynolds has ever been in has been horrible.
Well, it was something they were talking about that on one of the morning drive shows around here, and they're like, "Well, Ryan Reynolds is a big star," and he's like, "Why would you think that Ryan Reynolds is a big star? He's been in a lot of movies, but they're all so."
Yeah.
There's a lot of romantic comedy type stuff. Like when I thought about it, I'm like, Ryan Reynolds has never been in anything that's been really big that didn't flop.
Proposal,
Van Wilder is probably the biggest one that everybody knows him from. though.
or The Proposal,
The Proposal is
Yeah.
probably the biggest thing.
There's
and
the
probably
one he
most
did with-
because
impressive.
of and that was
Anna
because
Faris,
of Betty White's character performance in that.
Well, no, I think
Yeah,
it more had to
Sandra
do with the
Bullock.
fact that Sandra Bullock was.
Well,
in it.
she was also yes,
Yeah.
but
You're not in a movie with America's Sweetheart and not have her be
hey,
the
he
star.
was voted 2010
and he was
sexiest
yeah,
man
he was
alive.
that year too. I think.
Yeah, no, he's a star. I'm not saying it's like
Everybody
he's a B-list,
knows him,
whatever.
but he's not like
He's
Tom
not a
Cruise.
huge. Yeah, he hasn't been in something that you would look at and go, "Oh my god, that's like a huge picture."
Yeah,
Um,
until now.
yeah, until now.
Did you like the fact that it was one of the first few times where you have a masked superhero or villain that stayed pretty much in the mask the whole time when it was called for? I mean, they didn't.
Well, that's part of the
overtly
reason
just
why
take it
I
off.
it's part of the reason why I don't think it's him.
Yeah.
Think of it. You can shoot that film in 3 weeks.
Oh yeah.
Really. I mean, if you have three units and you could shoot that entire film in 3 weeks, and then everything else is just CG.
To be honest with you, I think there could be a majority of the time that it was CG, just because the way the mask moves while he talks.
It could be effects to it.
Well,
but
they
the eyes and
they
all that
obviously added those effects later on.
Yeah, it's
'Cause-
definitely
and that was
effects
one
to
thing
it.
that I was going to say was it's
because he also just so you know he
he
didn't cut off his arm. That was a CG.
Oh no!
Yeah, he didn't cut
Oh.
off his hand there.
Man,
the baby hand.
I was about to say, how did he do that?
Spoilers.
Yeah, the comedy. It was a fun film.
Yeah, I mean,
and
it's-
I was surprised at how many kids were in the theater.
Well, I wasn't.
I mean, it was crazy when we went and saw it on Friday
I'm
night.
surprised there wasn't the back. We predicted at work that Monday, Tuesday, you'd start seeing this backlash as parents started speaking out about. I took my son to see a superhero movie and
So
it
that's
was
what I- yeah.
completely uncalled for.
There was actually. I remember seeing on my feed. It's like, oh, I took my son, my
There's
6-year-old
a little
kid
bit, but I mean,
to see
I'm
Deadpool.
talking about
Well,
like
there was a Deadpool one where they said where it was making fun of that, saying, "Well, why the fuck did you take your kid? We told you this
Yeah.
wasn't going to
Well,
be."
no, and
Yeah.
it's like. And
well,
then
no,
I
it was a
realized
thing where
after-
someone said like if there was only something to tell parents that this movie is inappropriate for children, and it was like the Deadpool tweet after it was.
Yeah.
You mean like the R rating?
Yeah.
Like ratings still. It's a funny thing when people look at it now. It's like ratings don't seem to mean anything to people anymore. They look at the type of film that it is, and they're like, "Well, it doesn't matter what if it's an action film, it's PG-13 now, right? They're all PG-13, right? No, some of them are R, and they're
Yeah.
R for a reason. Oh well, Spotlight is R because of the subject matter. It has nothing
Yeah.
to do with the objectionable content. It's just the fact that it's about priests touching little boys.
Well, this content could be
Exactly. That's what I
That's
mean.
the thing.
A content for most moviegoers seems to be if it's a superhero film or a comic book film
Mhm.
as content, it's automatically PG-13.
But you also forget that there have been R-rated comic book movies.
but there hasn't been one in a long time,
No.
or at least not long enough.
I think
sort of
Blade
thing.
was the last one. Wasn't
Blade
it?
No.
was one of the first ones.
Punisher
No.
kills.
Punisher Warzone
Warzone
was I
the
think
last
the
one.
last ones.
Okay.
But
Sebastian
I mean,
has arrived.
but if you think about it, you're talking about numbers and stuff like that. It's already the 6th highest grossing R-rated film of all time.
Yeah. No, the numbers shocked me because I actually thought it would be.
Which is it's what
I
it's
thought-
235 million now.
Yeah.
in 2 weeks.
I knew it would be good enough. Grab a chair from the dining room, bro. I knew it would be like number one or whatever. When they started saying $130 million in 4 days, I was like, holy crap!
Yeah,
Highest grossing-
490 international.
Yeah, highest grossing movie in February now.
It's the highest grossing February film. It was the highest grossing President's Day weekend. Because that's the thing. They were giving the numbers like it's $130 million over the weekend, but it did have an extra day because of Monday. That number ended up getting like wrapped into it.
Highest grossing film in Russia, beating out Star
It
Wars.
beat out Star Wars for the
That's
opening
it.
weekend.
Yeah,
Russians do not like Star Wars. It's
Was-
because they all
was it
come for
Colossus?
Colossus.
they
yes.
went,
Colossus.
they went for Colossus.
Colossus is in movie. This is fantastic.
He's a Russian superhero.
Now you must do good things. See, Russians are right. They tell you all the good things. Look at this American pig. It tells you about cutting off his hand, and he is very not good. Yet Colossus Russian, he's good.
Second highest. This weekend was the second highest grossing
What
rated
did
R
it do
film.
this weekend?
55
Or
million.
What will it do this weekend? 55. That's
55,
insane.
and the highest grossing one is American Sniper
No.
with 64.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying no for that. It's just, I really, that's it. I thought it would be number one. I thought it would be big, but I didn't think it would be that big.
Yeah, it's crazy what it's done. I mean,
And also, it helps. The movie's only barely over 90 minutes. It's only
Yeah.
100 minutes, like 105, something like that.
It's 1 hour 48 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's what's crazy about it too.
And it's a good love story.
What you got? I mean, it is. It is.
It's a perfect Valentine's Day movie.
Well, I don't know about perfect.
That's perfect.
I don't know.
Porn is a perfect Valentine's.
Well,
Well, that was the interesting fact. Is like if you think about what the movie was, it wasn't really an action movie. It was more of a romantic comedy with action in it. Like it was a whole lot
Well, I
of
think
stuff that was
it
based
hits.
in
It checks off a lot of boxes.
Yeah.
I mean, it checks off a lot of boxes in a lot of different ways. It's a comedy. It's an action film.
Me and my boss, when I saw it with my boss, and he was like, "Yeah, it's really just like a romantic comedy for guys, basically."
Yeah.
Well, it beat out. The funny thing is, last year for Valentine's Day, it was 50 Shades of Grey, and it demolished 50 Shades of Grey's numbers.
Well, it's going. 50 Shades of
'cause-
Grey had a huge weekend, and then it didn't do anything after that.
you have the girls and guys for this movie
Yeah.
compared to just really the girls.
Well, no,
Oh,
it was,
there
it
were
was
guys
the
in 50
word,
Shades of Grey.
Yeah,
It was the
because
word
the
of
girls
mouth.
there because
It was the word of mouth of 50 Shades of Grey that really killed that movie because everybody's like, the writing is terrible in this
Well, they
movie.
could-
Well, they were
Totally
like, it's
cool.
so much not like the book, and da 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 da
Yeah,
da.
and I think-
She's not naked nearly enough.
But I mean, the numbers for just, I'm happy. I'm happy that Deadpool is what it is. I think it's the shot in the arm that comic book movies needed.
Maybe.
Mm.
This is where the danger comes in.
Yeah, but- and
This is what we really
exactly
wanted
what
to
I-
talk about.
Right.
Is with the fallout from it, and fallout in places that we wouldn't think would be fallout. One of the big fallouts right now is
boy.
the cosplaying community going, look, we know there's going to be somehow, some way, even more Deadpools at every convention. You cannot act like assholes just because you're in a Deadpool costume.
Right.
And that's one of the things that they're really afraid of, is that this gives people... A lot of Deadpool cosplayers have been accused of taking that license to be beyond funny to being inappropriate.
Well, we've seen there's
Look,
one Deadpool.
A bunch of people dressed up as Superman too. They didn't go around breaking people's necks
Yeah.
and smashing tables and kicking over.
Although that would be
displays.
cool.
Well, there has been.
We didn't
one
walk up to a Superman cosplayer and shoot him in the chest and see if it bounced off.
That would be awesome.
That's an old...
Um,
I can't remember what comedian that was. It was an old joke. It's like, every time I see a guy in a Superman shirt, I just want to walk up to him and shoot him in the chest and be like, nope, not you, and then just walk away.
There's one
You
Deadpool
just gotta throw the gun
cosplayer
at him and he'll dodge it.
Yeah.
that's always that we always see outside of like Comic-Con and WonderCon and everything. That's all, usually with the sign people, and he always comes up with these creative signs and everything. Who fits right into that humor and does a good job with it. And he's not.
There's a couple of them
overtly
that do it, and they do it in a way where, especially the guys that are on YouTube or whatever, they set it up. They basically
Right.
tell you, I'm going to come over to you, I'm going to look down at your cleavage, and then you're going to hit me in the head, and then I'm going to fall over.
Right.
And if that person is game for it, that's cool. But when they're just filming it, they come over and they're like, oh, I touched your boobies, and then he runs away, that's what they're afraid of. So that's the first fallout from it. The second one is that everything's going to be rated R now.
Yes.
Oh, let's make it all rated R.
Wolverine 3, they're going for a rated
There's
R.
already a lot of discussion in the movie community about how that's now the conversation for superhero films.
And that was the big thing I was going to bring up was James Gunn, director of Guardians of the Galaxy, director of Guardians of the Galaxy 2, which just started production this week, came
Is
out
it rated R?
and made probably the best comment about what the fallout of this movie could be, and not to mention the fact that he had mentioned about Guardians. He's kind of biased. Guardians of the Galaxy was a way to kind of push the boundaries, but this movie really, really pushed the boundaries of what you can do. And he's already heard
But
executives.
honestly, it doesn't.
It didn't.
No.
It didn't. All it did was use its R rating to bring the story closer to its comic book counterpart
Yeah.
than most other superheroes would ever need to. A movie like Blade works because the content is rated R content, or at least it's ripe for rated R
Yes,
content.
yeah, that's the other thing. Is Deadpool's not a rated R book. There's a Deadpool Max book
Yeah,
that goes
and it can
way
be.
farther than
Yeah, but-
it's basically they took the story that Joe Casey had set up.
Right.
Which, by the way, for as much as Rob Liefeld, everything in that film is from Joe Casey's run. the bar, the bartender, Blind Al, Vanessa, his reasons for going through, all Joe Casey's run. All of it. Has nothing to do with what Rob created and
But
Fabian created.
but he'll
He
always
because
be,
he was because Fabian was like, hey, I want to do this, and Rob's like, hey, I drew something. Here you go. Where's his feet? Who cares, bro? Turn my hat backwards, put on some Jordache, slam a do.
And we also saw the reverse, though, of what happens when you take a property that should be rated R and water it down with the first Punisher film,
Yes.
which was a movie that
What's the first Punisher for?
It was
John Travolta was not rated R?
Warzone was rated
I know
R.
Warzone was.
No.
Are you
Yeah,
talking-
you're
are you
right.
talking about the Dolph Lundgren one?
No, I'm
No,
talking,
no.
no.
Tom
That's
Jane
not a
one.
Punisher film.
But again, that was a movie hamstrung by not using the source material to its fullest potential by avoiding that rated R narrowly.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot. Then again, rated R doesn't mean you're going to get violent. Violence does not mean you get a rated R. Usually, it's nudity and cursing that pushes you.
Yeah,
over
it's
the
nudity, cursing, and again, it's how serious you take that
it's the
subject. With
graphic
John
violence.
Travolta being, you know what the shameful thing is? If you look up Punisher on IMDb, the character that they show you at the top is John Travolta's terrible.
Yeah, it's
villain.
not. It's not Thomas.
It also
Wayne.
hamstrung that movie when they're like, "Hey, I got an idea. Let's set it in Florida for some reason."
Right.
yeah, that was.
Where's all the information?
So a little off topic.
The Punisher is listed as rated R on IMDb.
Okay.
Well, I
but
thought
you-
it was just for the beach scene where they kill his whole family.
That might be it because I do remember. I think you were with me when we went to see the Warzone panel at Comic-Con. It was like late at night, and I want to say that Galen Hurd was there. I think she's the producer of the second one, and she mentioned the fact like this is going to be shockingly more violent than the first movie.
That I remember.
Because
then
they
I will
basic-
adjust my comment then in that they did not use their R rating to the fullest
No,
extent. Then.
and I think
they
they
used it all
wasted
for
it.
one scene.
Yeah, I think they wasted it on what is a terrible, horrible scene.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about terrible? You want to talk about completely taking a character and going, we don't know what makes this work. His family dies. Okay, so if his wife and his two kids are enough to send him on this, what happens if we kill everyone who has ever known in his entire life in an absolute orgy of death and violence that takes you completely out of the film because there's no personal connection
Death and
to him
violence
at
that
all?
you never
And that's
actually
the other thing.
see.
Yeah.
That's the other
If
thing
that's
that'll
what
make it
gave
R.
it the R rating, that is the most weak sauce cutaway of a family getting shot. I mean,
But
even his own
killing
family,
the kids, showing the kids getting killed was
you never
right
see
there.
it. No, because they cut away when
Dude,
they.
I thought you see them dead though.
You see them dead, but you never actually see them get run over by the truck on the boardwalk. They cut away from that.
Yeah.
And
Right.
again, if that's what gave them the rated R, then I am surprised that
No,
somebody-
because
that-
when
that-
you
that-
mentioned it, I believe I was like, wait, I thought it was. Maybe it wasn't because there's almost nothing in it. Maybe the only other thing I can think of is when the Russian attacks him.
Oh, he
in
The
throws
torture with Foster.
the torture with Foster is
It's a little. I mean, it's nails and.
but you
they
don't
really
see
show
most
it,
of
yeah.
it. You don't
No,
see
you
most-
don't see any of it.
So that could
The
be it
Russian
could
in
be
the
so-
house,
The Russian
when-
in the house because he kills him with the
Paper
with
cutter.
the paper cutter blade.
Yeah.
But I don't remember that being gory either.
No, it was that movie is not a gory film. There's not.
No.
The only.
Well, like we said with
Yeah.
Blade, like
And
if Blade
so-
were released today as it is,
It'd
you'd
probably
have a
be-
chance to be a PG-13
Oh, yeah.
film.
Yeah.
But anyway, yes, it's back to going. Everything will be rated R from now on.
Do you think that James Gunn does have a point though? I mean, he's already heard execs saying that we need to start looking more towards being like Deadpool, and you can't make
It's a
Guardians of
blank-
the Galaxy.
It's a
Deadpool.
blanket.
You can't make.
It's a blanket statement. What you should take away from it is that if you have subject matter and you look at it and go, you know what? If we treat this seriously, we can make this an R-rated film and not be scared of that anymore.
Right.
If the flip is, well, we already got X-Force in production, we're gonna murder everybody in X-Force and we're gonna get an R rating because R rating rules now. That's what the kids want. Then you're going in the wrong direction.
See, I think
biggest-
X Force is something that definitely should be R-rated.
It shouldn't. There's nothing in X-Force that makes it
Right.
an R rating.
I
They
do-
would be the same thing as this. If you want to have every character in X-Force say the F word, because the F word's used in Deadpool, 84 times, 85
much,
times,
yeah.
something like that. It's an insane amount. They just decided that's what they wanted to do. And of course, there's a lot of other language in it as well.
Yeah.
And it's for this guy's first big major motion picture too to come
Yeah.
out with this kind of runaway success.
No, it's huge. But again, an X-Force film doesn't have to have you don't have to make it R to treat the subject correctly.
Right, because they're
quote,
they're
unquote.
more of a black ops team. They're not like this kooky band of characters. I mean, especially if you're going to pick a team that's someone like Phantom X's team.
If they're going to do the Wolverine team, if you're doing Remender's team,
right.
if you do the Chris Yost team, which was in the same vein, it was Wolverine's secret team to go out and
Well, yeah, but the Yost
and
team
murder
was a lot more of a murder kill. You know, they
were
were a
both of
murder
them were.
squad.
Both of them were. But the Yost team was set up as that. It was Cyclops going, I need a team that kind of does the bad things that we can't do.
Right.
And I don't want to hear about it. Just go do it. Remender picks it up as once that's shut down, Wolverine goes, no, we still need this team.
Yeah.
We're just doing it in secret. But the thing is, if you're talking about a murder team, they can still kill people. All three of the Lord of the Rings films are PG-13.
Right.
And there's a lot of people that get hacked up in those films. It's not super gory, but there's a lot of people that are dead.
Yeah,
you
you
don't
just-
have to use
People getting their
an
heads stabbed
X-Force
and
team.
chopped
Yeah,
off.
you don't have to use X-Force in the fact that they're going to go kill people.
But see,
It
I
doesn't
think,
have
I
to
think
be
that,
R.
I want to see
Deadpool
Domino
lend-
naked. Damn it.
Yeah, that's. But Deadpool lends itself because of the comedy aspect of it and the silliness to have something
Yes,
like
it's
that.
easier to go rated R, especially with comedy, because there's a lot of different comedy that can push boundaries, especially with languages, is really how you get the R rating.
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
All it takes
it's
is
two F words.
Yeah,
and you're
two
done.
F words, and that's R. Which
One-
is,
one
but you get-
MF.
Yeah, and that's you're done, and you get the R rating, and that's all the movie studios shaking their boots. But I think it also shows that good films, no matter what, transcend their rating, especially when you look at things like the 80s and early 90s for action films, which are almost all rated R films,
Right.
which are not only box office draws, but are huge classics in terms of specific genres. You look at a movie like RoboCop, which is rated R. You get to watch Murphy get blown apart,
Right.
but nobody goes, "Oh my goodness, oh my god, the violence."
Look at Rambo.
Rambo, which got a children's cartoon show.
And a toy line.
So did RoboCop.
So did-
RoboCop
yeah.
got a TV show too. They made alien toys, and that had an alien breaking out of a man's chest like a prison breaker, Andy Dufresne. So no, the idea that the R rating is death is something that the studios, I believe, imposed on themselves and was not indicative of any trends.
Well,
Right.
once you start seeing those PG-13 films do so well, when you saw X-Men do well as a PG-13 film, you saw X2 do
Right.
well, and especially once you get into Avengers, these big Marvel films, Iron
Right.
Man and Avengers, they're all PG-13. It's like it gives it enough of an edge
Yeah.
that the hip kids, will buy it as something serious, but we don't have to make it an R so that the hip kids can get into
Yes.
these films.
Yeah.
Well, you remember when Star Wars Revenge of the Sith was announced that it would be PG-13. Everybody thought that was going to be the death of it.
I don't know if anyone thought it was the death of it. It was
Because-
just kind of an odd piece. Like, what the hell makes it PG-13? And in that case, it was subject matter. It was the
Right.
subject matter of the last third of the film. You're like, hey kids, just watch. A bunch of guys are going to turn on the Jedi and murder them. Somehow the Jedi aren't going to figure this out, even though we've shown that they should. But they're all going to get killed. But it's just subject matter. And I always want to say it's Rick Berman. It's not Rick Berman. I can't remember the producer's name.
Lots of Ricks.
McCollum.
McCollum,
Rick
yeah.
McCollum.
McCollum says it on the commentary track, where he says this is what got us our PG-13 rating, was because the subject matter in the last third. There's no
Well, do you
joy in the
remember
last third of that
they
film.
reshot the burning Anakin 3 different ways
Yeah.
just in case. No, but Deadpool to me, if you want to go around now and talk about what you didn't like about it, the one big problem I had with it was, even though I get that when his X gene took over, the cancer showed itself on the outside. It would have been cooler if that when he set the oxygen off and he burned himself. Because one of the things with Deadpool is that every scar he keeps every scar from when he gets shot or stabbed or whatnot. The burn and everything look to it that he had would have been really cool if it just became off of when he blew himself up.
But that's not the way that it's originally written. That's what it was. The point is, it wasn't him burning.
Right.
It was he was immediately, once he received the treatment, he was immediately disfigured.
Yeah, it was the basically
The cancer showing itself on the outside.
Well, not just that, but he ran through every stage of his cancer and then healed.
Yeah, because
And
that was
Right.
They even
it's a
explicitly
regenerative
said
piece.
it in the movie.
Yeah, and that's the way that it was set up
So-
in the comic when they kind of redid his origin. It was, in order to beat the cancer, they had to act. Whatever he received, he goes through every stage, like
Right.
in an accelerated potion, and that's what makes him look like crap.
Right, and it also depends. And you also have to
And
remember,
you also
especially with comics,
you weren't going
depends
to
on who-
burn him completely because Ryan Reynolds is in the film. He's
Right.
at least recognizable.
Sure.
It's one of those things you look at him and go, he doesn't look that bad.
When the jokes that they made
Yeah.
about it, he's not that
he's
much
not
of
that
an
he's not
ass.
that bad. I mean, some of the
That's
ways that
also
they've shown
makeup
him.
decision too.
Yeah.
I mean, if they decide to go even further next movie, they don't really need an explanation.
Right.
Well,
And even in the comics, his appearance varies from
Yeah,
from
it
issue
depends
to
on
issue.
the way he looks in X-Force isn't
Some-
anything like
yeah.
it looks like in the
Some
regular.
artists have him with no skin on parts of his muscly
Yeah,
flesh.
this is-
Some artists just have
He
him
looks like a
look-
zombie almost.
Yeah.
To some. And,
Yeah.
and it's changing because he's always regenerating. I thought that the funny part in terms of that appearance is I don't remember what interview he was doing, but he was talking about the fight scene where he's fighting naked,
Yeah.
and they had to apply makeup to his entire body.
Yeah.
He was in the makeup chair at something like 1 a.m. for a 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. call time to be on the set because it took so long to put the makeup on, and he had to cover his entire body in the
Yeah,
makeup. Like,
prosthetic
that
makeup.
sucks, man.
First, Beth looked at me and goes, "Do you think that's his, or do you think, Mike, honey, that's probably a fabricated one?" I
Well,
said,
we all know that Mark Wahlberg's penis really comes down to his knee.
yeah. Did you like the jokes that it made of itself?
Yeah.
I mean, the Ryan Reynolds, the Wolverine, or the Hugh Jackman at the end, when he takes off the mask.
Yeah.
I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it was a brilliant nod to the idea that everyone kept saying that Hugh Jackman was going to be in the film.
Yeah.
That he'd have like that single cameo role like First Class where
Right.
he just says the FU.
No, but
The-
it
the
still was a way
Hugh
to.
Jackman cameo that no one ever said he would be in the film. That
But
Everyone just
apparently he
assumed.
supposedly was on set or something.
yeah, I'm sure he was like, "Oh, hey, how's it going, everybody?" And then he left.
Oh, so this is what a good origin film looks like?
Right. For me, what I appreciated the most is that not so much the breaking of the fourth wall, which was really good, but even the knowledge within the movie that he is in a movie and that his entire universe is a film universe.
Yes.
And that Hugh Jackman both exists for us, but is what Wolverine is in that movie universe. So I thought that was really fun that it's like, no, he's not really Wolverine. He's just an actor playing Wolverine. They just all think it's real.
He's the only one in the comic books that knows he's in a comic book.
No, well, not true.
Well-
She-Hulk also knows she's in a comic book.
Well, John Byrne She-Hulk. I don't know if
No,
the current
even the current She-Hulks in the previous run too. They made references.
Oh, Dan Slott's run?
Dan Slott's run. They made references to the comic books in their universe being legal representations of cases, and they occasionally hung on to her winking at the reader.
Right.
So she is still aware that she is in a comic book as well. So that's two. I think there's one more.
I love the fact that the McAvoy Stewart comment, that was great, and the fact that the whole universe or multi-universe is confusing to him.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't keep the timeline straight.
I love
But I
that.
thought it poked fun at things that in advance of what people may say for it. It's the mansion. It's
Mansion
almost,
blowing
yeah,
up. Yeah.
No, well, no, it's almost like the movie studio didn't pay to have more than 2 actors in this, but in terms of the X-Men.
Right.
Yeah. The
It's-
only other
it's
time
getting
you ever see
ahead
that
of-
mansion full is X-Men 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's getting ahead of people that would go like, well, why isn't this person in it? Why didn't they use some of the characters from Age of Apocalypse? Why, this could have been Jean Grey's first appearance. Why did you? No, it's just
Right.
it was a movie that was done very quickly, and quote unquote on the cheap. You can call it a $75 million budget.
I
on
will
the cheap.
say I loved the opening title sequence, just on the fact that they gave no names. It was just a bunch of
Oh, yeah.
It was
comment- or,
descriptive
like,
text.
Yeah,
it was definitely
some dude that got paid a lot more than he should have for this
yeah.
movie.
It was just like
That's
a
really
really
hot
girl.
controlling
Generic
freak or
British
whatever,
villain.
generic British villain. It set the tone immediately for what the film you were going to get.
Yeah.
And even a way there, it was something. It was a self-aware type of film.
I don't know about you guys, but when I went and saw it on Friday night, no one got up at the end of the film, and everybody stayed until the very end to see the after.
Half our
credit.
theater cleared out.
Yeah,
Did they really?
Well,
Yep.
it's also Marvel.
I don't remember seeing that. But
Marvel has
Well,
trained
the
the
people in
audience
front of
well.
us who got up and clocked out.
I think
Some
there was
people
like
back
2 or
with us.
3 people that left, but most of our
Yeah.
theater stayed too.
Yeah, you sort of wonder when people are like, really? I mean, they made a big deal. I will say, if you want to talk about things that I hated the fact that what they did. I loved the post-credit scene because
Yeah.
it's a nod to the first famous, if not the first ever, post-credit scene in Ferris Bueller.
Yes.
Yes.
But the fact that the fun part of it is, hey, Cable's in the next one. Every geek site put that out on Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yep.
And that was I was like, really? You couldn't let that be a part for the audience? You had to tell everybody to Cable confirmed for sequel. We're not going to tell you how we know, but because we saw the movie on Monday
Yep.
as a review screening, we know that Cable's in the second one because he says at the end. So when we get to the end credit for us as an audience, and I look at it like, well, there's nothing exciting
I
there
didn't know
because
that.
Apparently there were two
Yeah,
of them.
you-
I didn't hear any of that crap. So
Apparently there were
Gotta
there
get
were
those
2
clicks.
end credit scenes shot, and the
Well,
one
there
that they
was-
showed at the premiere is different than the one that was showed to the
well,
audience.
remember there were 3 end credit scenes for Origin.
right.
There was 3 different ways that would show that Deadpool was still alive.
Yeah, I mean, and I when I saw the movie, I don't know why I saw it twice in the theater, but I saw it two different ways, and at the end of it, though, I think the second one it showed Deadpool's mouth open and him, the severed head, and he's
Yeah.
smiling or something.
Yeah, it was like a smile, and wasn't it when he shoots the laser beam out again?
Yeah.
And then he moves or something. Yeah.
Well,
But
so-
that was the other thing was when Deadpool or Wade makes fun of himself of of
I used to have powers.
yeah.
Well,
Don't. I'm going to sew your mouth shut. I wouldn't do that. That's a really bad idea.
Well, they show the action figure
Yeah,
from
actually,
it.
it's a
and
That-
collectible as he throws it in his backpack.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
TJ Miller has said that for the Blu-ray release, they're going to do as a director's cut unrated because there was so much that
Stuff
they
to cut
shot
out.
Oh yeah.
that they had to cut out
Oh, yeah,
for the
yeah.
movie, and so it's going to be extended. It's going to be
They'll have
unrated.
deleted,
It's
they'll
going to
have
be
all that
director's
stuff.
Yeah,
cut.
I had a lot. It's
So-
one of those. It's one.
By
of
the way,
yeah.
T.J. Miller is one of the most unheralded and
Oh,
underrated
totally.
comedic actors. He is hilarious, and people do not give him enough credit.
There's just certain movies there's some movies I can't stand him, and then there's
Really?
some movies
I've-
that
Well, no, Transformers
Kind of
4
fun.
is terrible anyway.
well, yeah,
That's not his fault. He's probably the only part of that made me kind of chuckle.
See, here's the thing with T.J. Miller. He reminds me a lot of Ryan Reynolds when Ryan Reynolds started out, as far as his comedy
Sure.
and everything. And they work very, very well together.
He's not as joyous of a comedian as
Yeah,
Ryan
it's
Reynolds
a
is, but
more of
it's
a
more
thing-
of a
I
dry,
mean, it's
smart,
the-
really dry, smart ass.
but see, that's how.
what is it? Out of Your League or whatever?
she's out of your
She's
league.
out of your league.
Yeah.
He's perfect in that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He's perfect.
Yeah.
He's perfect. I'm just gonna lose my
Oh,
voice
that
with
Jay
it.
Baruchel?
Yes, that's why you didn't see it.
Yeah, that's right.
Anything about Deadpool you didn't like?
Some weird editing here and there, but I mean that's more of a technical thing, and some of mostly for pacing. Some of the weird edits, because they did a lot of jump cuts to sort of speed time through certain scenes.
Right.
That's about it. I mean, otherwise, I thought the writing was solid. And for me, the biggest on the checklist of criteria for like a good superhero movie is capturing the essence of a character, and it did that successfully.
For all of the characters.
Yes, for everyone, even Colossus, which some people have hit and miss with. I loved Colossus in the movie because he's the Colossus that is in Deadpool comics, not in the regular X-Men comics.
Right.
Yeah, that's,
He's the funny Colossus that is, I'm trying to teach you something.
Yes.
He's a stereotypical Russian, and that's what I enjoy. Everyone's like, but he's not like this. Like, it's like, no. If you read a Deadpool
Supposedly,
comic,
it's a different actor that
yeah, it's not
ended.
Cutmore.
Yeah, it was
yeah,
done
they
for
they
the
decided to
last
redo the voice to do it
Yeah.
even funnier, which is fine. And I mean, that took 5 actors to do Colossus for different
And the great thing
scenes.
about Deadpool is you can have that different Colossus and then change it for X-Men.
Yes, yeah, exactly, because Deadpool is completely separate from the X-Men universe in its own bizarre way, because it's Deadpool, because nothing that movie does will ever affect, they'll never bring him up, they'll never mention him again, and then he'll get another movie, and
Do
that's
you
all
think?
that matters.
Do you think after this that Fox will bring him up because it is
I don't
such
think
a draw?
I don't think he fits in the type of film. I mean, in terms of the Bryan Singer films,
Yeah.
I don't think he fits in the type of films
Right.
He doesn't
that Bryan Singer
yeah,
is
he doesn't
going
fit,
to
but
show.
it's also one of those things like it's not necessary, because then at that point it would just be seen as pandering, because
The
then you'll
inter-
never put him in the movie.
The interesting thing is if they do Remender's X-Force.
Right.
If they do the Remender's version of X-Force with Psylocke, Phantom X,
Mm-hmm.
Wolverine, and Deadpool, are you going to do that? And you may not be able to, because you may not be able to afford to put Ryan Reynolds in that film.
He's already said he wants to do that.
It doesn't matter whether he wants to or not.
That's true.
Wants to is great until they come
He-
up to you and like, we're going to give you $2 million. No, you're going to give me 20. No, we're going to give you 2. I don't want to do this film anymore.
Yeah.
It's like Independence Day, where they had
Yeah.
a budget of like $200 million, and Will Smith alone wanted 50+ million.
Woo! I need 50 plus million to be in your movie. My kids are crazy.
And when they told him no, he quit and then started complaining that, look, well, they didn't bring me back. They didn't, they just didn't want me enough. Like,
I'd
yeah.
say Ryan Reynolds is a pretty
He-
good guy that he would probably go under.
he also
Or
took-
I'm not saying
Do
it's
you think
impossible.
do you think it'll
Yeah.
be more of a back end deal?
No, it's one of those things where, like, look, you're either paying Hugh Jackman or Ryan Reynolds. You're not getting both.
Although everybody wants to see a Wolverine Deadpool movie.
Yes, and they're not going to get it because even
Well, they
Hugh
already
Jackman has
got
said
it.
he's got one left.
They already got a Wolverine in Deadpool movie.
Yes, he did.
Do you think
And it was
do you think that Deadpool could show up in Wolverine 3 for a small part?
Not if they're gonna if
could do his head.
If they go
if
Old
anything
Man
of the
Logan,
if they do the Old Man Logan again, it just doesn't fit in that kind of story.
Right.
Like it's sort of like the way that they used Wolverine in X-Men First Class. It fits for that half a second.
Mm-hmm.
His attitude is just like, "Hey, come be on the team." Fuck you.
hey, you're a mutant. Come
yeah,
join us.
I'm not. Fuck you. I'm done.
Right.
And it was perfect. If you actually put him in that entire film,
It doesn't
it
work.
doesn't work for that film. You use him in the second one, it works into the type of characters. You put Deadpool in Age of Apocalypse, it's not going to make any sense.
Right.
True.
It
Well,
just
because
you're
then
gonna-
he could
Apocalypse
just-
takes off his mask and it's Deadpool. Really,
That would be
we
great.
reshot the ending. Oh,
or Deadpool would
everything's
just kill
Deadpool.
Apocalypse because nothing
Yeah.
would work on him.
Okay, so Easter eggs. Deadpool follows all of the Marvel
Tropes,
whether it's Marvel Studios or not, and has plenty of Easter eggs. This one was no.
The Helicarrier was the big one.
It was until everybody realized that the Hydra Bob was in it, and that was the one that's got them in trouble right now, because Fox doesn't own the rights to Hydra Bob.
They don't call him Hydra Bob.
They
They
didn't
call him Bob. They do everything, and Fox came
Yeah,
out.
that's
Well, but he's also not Hydra Bob. He's Bob,
He's
and
Bob.
he was the waiter at a restaurant on one of his vacations.
No, he was his best friend in Special Ops. He says it, and then
Yeah.
he shows up at the end, and they confirm that he is Hydra Bob.
I didn't realize that until I saw it.
Well,
yeah,
Oh, that makes
they can
perfect
confirm
sense.
it in a
But
thing.
they never said
It's
Hydra.
it's a roundabout. No, yeah.
It's a nod to the Bob character that
Yes.
was in Joe Casey's.
I
run.
get that.
Yeah, but
Because
it's
his
it's
Bob.
not
There's
Hydra
no
Bob.
legal recourse.
It's not Hydra Bob because they never said Hydra. There is no Hydra. It's
It'd be
just Bob.
It would be the same thing as Cap mentioning the Professor in an Avengers film.
Right.
We all may think, oh, he's talking about Professor Xavier, but
Well,
he-
there's
the
several sites
Professor
that come out and said that there possibly could be some legal ramifications for that.
There's no way.
They would have.
It seems to me that
they would have no claim because they never call him Hydra Bob. He
Yeah.
never
Bob,
wears
Bob
the Hydra
they
outfit.
don't have a trademark on Bob.
yeah.
right. To me, the helicarrier would be more of the
The helicarrier is a big again,
But
never,
it's also
never,
they never say helicarrier.
Yeah.
They never say shield.
and it's a
those are
design.
the
It's
outs.
a design that is not super exclusive. We've seen
what they said
flying
was-
ships.
They said
before.
they said make it a helicarrier, make it a shield helicarrier, but change it enough from the
Movies.
movie
Yeah.
version.
It looks like the comic book version,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah,
fine.
it looks more like a classic
Helicarrier.
aircraft
I
carrier,
thought
which
it
the
was
original
great.
helicarrier was.
I thought it was great to have it in there. It
No,
kind
it's little
It's one of
pieces.
those things where as soon as when I saw the trailer for it, I was like, "Is that a helicarrier, or is that
It is a
just like?"
helicarrier. It's-
And
Yeah,
when I
well-
saw the film, I was like, "Holy shit!" That's
I got
a
about
helicarrier.
halfway
That's a-
through that scene before realizing I'm like, oh wait, we're in the wrong universe. We're not supposed to have a helicarrier in this.
Okay, so we're going to switch topics now.
Switch topics that hard. You didn't have to
yeah,
like put
yeah,
the
yeah,
brakes
yeah.
on. I'm just like looking at the
I know, but I
time,
wanted to get to
bro.
Rebirth anyways because there's.
We got. It's okay. What
I
are we at?
purposely- We're at
5 hours still.
44 minutes.
Wow, that's longer than I thought. Well, we were waiting. I stalled for Sebastian. to
Oh,
be
okay.
here.
Well, thank you. But
But yes, no, it was a good film. Made a whole lot of money.
it did.
It was. I will say,
It's on my list.
I'm about halfway through that film, and we saw it Saturday morning, I think. And I knew you had already seen it. And about halfway through the film, I'm like, oh my god, Rich must love this film.
I did.
I'm gonna hear so much about this fucking film for the next 2 years.
I love that.
I was waiting for a dance sequence just to go, oh god, no, I'm gonna have to do the whole thing for years. The dance sequence.
But
Oh my
the
God.
telltale is if Rich is gonna buy it on digital like a week
I
or
will.
two before it comes out.
He's
on
he's
DVD.
already bought it. He's
I've already watched it twice,
And,
or 3 times.
watch it whenever
Because
it
I
comes
watched
on
it one time on
HBO.
the bootleg.
That's a good thing you announced over the air.
I know, right?
Good job.
I've already paid double my money on it, and I'll buy it in
Yeah,
various
nothing like
forms.
getting Juan Pablo to shoot it with his iPhone from the back row.
Oh no, but yeah, I love that movie. It was exactly what I wanted for the Deadpool.
Yes, it was a very visceral reaction. Again, did not have the same reaction as a lot of other people did. We're like, this is the greatest thing that's ever existed in the history of mankind. Oh my god, I love it. I went like, it was good. I enjoyed it, but I don't have that reaction to a lot of films anymore.
best performing origin film of any of them that have been out.
Beth is
No,
Beth's
best.
performing.
Beth is performing all of the origin films. She'll be there every Saturday night for the next 5 months. Outdid Captain America, outdid Thor, outdid all of Spider-Man, outdid
Yeah, but all those films are old enough now that really those numbers don't even count.
outdid
anymore.
Iron Man.
You know, we have to also
Same thing
account
with
for
Iron Man.
inflation too.
Yeah, Iron Man 3 outdid Iron Man a lot.
I mean, heck, just the ticket prices alone.
Iron Man 3 in
between
its opening weekend
2008.
did
Yeah, but see,
better than
I don't like that. I know we talk about that all the time and everything.
Inflation
I don't-
matters because
no,
less
it-
people go see movies.
But it also matters because it's in more theaters, this, that, and the other. There's 100 different ways to look at it.
But collectively, people year over year don't go see movies in the movie theater, and inflation matters a lot because Gone with the Wind is still the highest grossing film of all time when you adjust for inflation.
Yeah, in
Sure.
terms of pure tickets sold. And numbers are numbers, and you get those numbers. But you qualify everything, yes. It probably more people went to see this than went to see the opening weekend of Captain America, the First Avenger. You could sit here now and look at the numbers really close to Avengers. But Avengers just simply had more people in the theater.
Right.
It just did. And it's one thing or the other. It performs well enough that people are willing to go spend $11 or what the fuck did we pay, like 14 or something?
Right. You
For
also
the
have
love
to,
of
yeah,
God,
you also have to take
we
into
got
account-
into the wrong theater.
Did you go to the,
if you're gonna,
the XL theater?
you also have to
Apparently,
remember if
that's
you're
what
gonna
we
if you're
did.
gonna compare, especially to something like Iron Man 1, which came out in 2008. I paid like $8 for my ticket in 2008. I paid $16 for Deadpool.
What the hell did you go
Where'd
see
you go?
Deadpool?
I just went to go to the regular ArcLight non-3D showing.
Stop going to the ArcLight, dude.
See,
I
we
want
went to
a
the
good
XL.
audience, and I can't find one anywhere but ArcLights. So
Oh, so the snobby ArcLight people
Yes.
are the good audience.
We went to the
Are.
XL theater here in Thousand Oaks, and it was 16.
That's where we went. We
Yeah,
went
because
in
you
the
went
morning.
Friday
after
night, yeah.
matinee too.
Well, we
and
did-
yes, matinee prices are always nicer too, especially because I usually go
Yeah,
and
but
see
the
them
change
really
is-
early
isn't
in
it
the
different
morning.
anymore?
It's not. It's
So
not. My
I missed the
matinee
days
price
when
is
it was like half price.
yes.
You know,
So
it was
I
like
do wanna-
$11 and $6. You're like, yay! But now it's like $11, $10. Oh wow!
Yeah, I also got
Saturday,
invited last
Saturday's
minute.
children at MovieCo, children are more than adults. For Saturday, it's their tickets like $11, and adults are $9
Got to get
for a
them some
regular
student
theater.
IDs.
Well, what's funny is when
At
we
night?
No, during the day.
Oh, I was gonna say, I was like, where are you paying $9 at night? Okay,
no,
yes.
during the day.
Why don't
Yes,
have
because they
a
don't
matinee
adjust
for-
the matinee
That's
price for
stupid.
kids.
Well, it was funny because I was looking at the ticket because my boss bought our tickets, but we went on a Friday matinee and it was like $9.25. I was like, the popcorn and the drink were more expensive than the ticket. That's
Well,
what's
well,
Well,
ridiculous.
that's
Yeah.
that's been like that for
That's
decades.
ridiculous.
They have to
Paid
charge
like-
those prices because
yeah.
they're literally breaking even paying for the reels in ticket prices. They
Yeah,
don't
'cause
make any
that-
money
that-
on them.
Because all your money in the first weekend goes back to the studio, and then it
Yeah.
cuts each one down.
Well, no, it was just funny that because I got a small popcorn and a small drink,
Probably costs like
and it was like $12.65.
Yeah.
And
Did
the
you
ticket
not?
was
Did you not
$9.
buy your bosses since he bought your ticket?
I did,
Oh,
but
okay.
it's still like I was like just for one small popcorn and one drink, it was
No, that's
like
crazy.
$3 more than the ticket.
So in
was.
wrapping this up, Chris, this does prove one thing that you have been saying all along for superhero movies. It doesn't matter when you release a movie, as long as it's a good film.
No, yeah, a big film like this that's got that sort of thing. I think it still matters where you release some films because
Do you
just
think next
simply-
month's March release of Batman vs
it's an
Superman?
odd one. It really
it's
to me it
WonderCon
is.
weekend.
Did you
at least for
have
the
you heard what
SoCal.
they said though?
That's
That
crap.
they're getting worried about this film, and it may change they may
is
end
the
up
chatter.
changing their
universe because of
their
it.
universe. Yeah.
And they already have a Wonder Woman movie that they're halfway through shooting. That success depends on this movie as well.
Yep.
Especially if they decide to redo everything and their entire style for their film.
So what we're
series.
saying is that the movieverse will go through a rebirth.
It
also.
will.
Speaking of rebirth,
There we go.
Stupid.
segue.
Gotta do good segue.
So DC has announced, it was a little while ago, that there's this rebirth that's coming, and a lot of people didn't know what it was. Well, over the weekend at the Comics Pro meeting up north in Oregon, they gave you a lot more information.
Oregon.
In Oregon.
What's an Oregon?
It was a special announcement. Jeff Johns did a video which basically was talking about the previous rebirths that they've done in the Green Lantern and the Flash, and to a certain degree Flashpoint as well. Talked a lot about the fact that Flash is a catalyst to a lot of these different changes like Crisis on Infinite Earths and Flashpoint and what have you. And Rich just
Rich
killed
has died.
himself.
He's died.
What the hell was that?
There's a bunch of tools and stuff in the middle of the walkway, and
He
he
tried to
died.
jump over it, but he didn't jump high enough. Apparently,
Oh, poor baby. You gotta get those hurdles back under there, buddy.
Also a fire hazard.
So
It's a work environment, damn it.
It's a work environment. We're trying to work here. So
We
they held a panel up at Comics Pro. It featured Dan DiDio, it featured Jeff Johns and Jim Lee, who are co-publishers. DiDio and Jim Lee are co-publishers, and then Johns is the creative director. Revealed to retailers it plans to provide these books with more story and more often, as we'll talk about later. Beginning in June, all of DC Universe monthly and now twice monthly titles will ship at a new lower price of $2.99. They're holding the line at $2.99 again. We shall see if
Except
the
for the major
content
titles, right?
Except for the
No,
major titles.
everything is
they're going
as
back
of
to
right
$2.99?
now. Everything is $2.99.
Wow.
What they don't know, what hasn't been revealed, is if the content will stay the same. Because when they went from $3.99 to $2.99, they cut two pages out of the story.
Yeah, they're 20
Made
page
it 20
books.
pages.
Yeah.
So we'll see if it becomes 18.
If you bought 22 pages and up, they were $3.99.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you
They
got
had the
more
back
ads.
issues, the back issues, yep, stuff like
Yep.
that. So they revealed their new lineup as well. It includes a combination of existing titles that will start off with number ones and some new titles. Titles will begin their runs under the Rebirth banner. Each book gets a Rebirth issue, and then it follows with a number one. So there's a one-shot, and then there's a number one. One of the big changes, DC's flagship legacy title, Detective and Action, will go back to legacy numbering. Detective will pick up with issue 934, and Action Comics will start with issue 957.
So they're trying to get them to their 700s?
They're 700s. They're trying to get into
That'd be
1,000.
thousands.
Action Comics will
I was
reach,
back to the
according to
Spider-Man.
Jeff Johns, Action Comics will reach 1,000.
And then
Um,
there's a mangaka in Japan going,
Yeah,
1,000
whatever.
after
1,000,
75
we
years.
do that in 6 months. What are you talking about?
I do
We
one.
review
I do.
six
I do
issues a
one
day.
22-page issue a week.
Yeah, come on.
They make theirs like porn, right? Basically. 3 of them a day.
They've released all the titles. They haven't released any of the creative teams. That will be done on March 26th, which is Saturday of WonderCon. That event, that press conference, or panel, whatever you want to call it, it is live streamed on DC Entertainment's YouTube channel. So
That
everyone
panel's
will
going to be a
able see
bitch
it.
to get into.
That panel's going to be hell to get into, but it should be fun to try.
Jeff Johns on Superman again, please.
We'll see. We'll see.
We're going to get Batman and his parents getting a rebirth.
I don't think you're going to see that.
I already read Earth 1, so
Hey, look, every time DC gets a chance to show the Waynes die, they do.
So we'll go real quick through. I'm going to run through this as quick as possible. So we're going to see stuff started in June. June, we see Rebirth specials and number ones for Aquaman, Batman, Flash, Green Arrow, Green Lanterns, Superman, Titans, and Wonder Woman. Those will be shipping twice a month. Action Comics and Detective Comics will start then. That's also twice a month. I'm sorry, I believe that's July. That's July. And then we get...
Is that the week of Comic-Con, probably?
probably not. I think it's starting first month. It should be starting first week of July, as far as I know. I had the
they'll
note
probably
here
be
and I lost
having
it.
some freebies though at Comic Con.
I'm sure they have a lot, ton of
Well,
stuff
you
for
remember
that.
what they did 2 years ago with Harley and a couple of the others that they...
They did previews.
Maybe it is true.
Yeah.
Maybe it is true. July, we have Rebirth specials and titles for Batgirl and the Birds of Prey, Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, Hellblazer, Nightwing, and Red Hood. Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, Justice League, and Nightwing will all be shipping twice monthly. Shipping monthly will be Batgirl, Batgirl and the Birds of Prey, Hellblazer, Red Hood and the Outlaws, The Superman, and Titans. And then, not given a specific date, but just saying fall, we see Batman Beyond, Blue Beetle, Cyborg, Deathstroke, Earth 2, which they're trying again, Suicide Squad, Supergirl, Teen Titans, Trinity. Excuse me as I flip the page.
And they're also trying to do Batman Beyond again without Terry McGinnis, and we all know how well that worked out last
that
time.
worked out well. Cyborg, the Harley Quinn Justice League America. Do this, yeah, and then the Trinity book that's there. So I had to cut and paste this list, and apparently I missed something.
Well, isn't Titans supposed to be out in May?
No.
What was supposed to be coming out with Free Comic Book Day?
It's the girl.
It's
The superhero girls.
Superhero
Yeah.
girls,
The Free Comic Book Day
And Suicide
offering
Squad.
is Suicide Squad.
Okay.
It's a reprint of the New 52 Suicide Squad. And then their silver or B listing is the new
Is that Superhero
Supergirls. Yeah. Jeff Johns did an interview with Comic Book Resources, and they asked him about. I just want to do a couple of these quotes that were here. It's talking about the balance and what they're doing going forward, because it is a major change, just not only in the books themselves in terms of creative teams, but in philosophy. He says, this is Jeff Johns' quote from CBR. This is not about making all the books feel the same. You have individual voices and writers and artists, obviously, and they all have their own particular vision. That's important.
It's about all of us coming together, not marching on the same narrow path, but living in the same universe again. Working with people who share passion and love for the DC universe, however they see it. I have absolutely loved every second of working with everyone. They talk about the success of DC has had with film and TV, and the opportunities there to make the comics more like the TV shows and movies, capitalize on their popularity. Johns' quote from there. Quote, I know people have been talking about they're going to make the comics like the TV shows or the films. Why would we do that? These aren't licensed comics. That's boring. We already have TV and the films, and those are great. The comics are their own thing. We talked about Green Arrow with the writer, and all we talked about, the great Green Arrow runs, all we talked about was the great Green Arrow runs that have happened. There have been a lot of them. If there's something interesting we see in film or TV that we want to not bring over, we do it, but it's really much more focused on the comic books themselves. He talks about the terms of Rebirth. With DC Universe Rebirth, it's the same thing. If you have, like me, long boxes of DC comics, you will be very happy. If you've never read a DC comic before, you won't be too lost. This is definitely for comic book readers, more than it is for casual readers, just like Green Lantern Rebirth, but that doesn't mean it's exclusive of them, end quote. That, I thought, was one of the most important pieces.
Right.
How much of the legacy do you think they're bringing back?
It depends. We'll get through that type of stuff.
I'll throw confetti around the city if I get Wally West back.
We'll see. Well, that's one of the big things.
That was one of the big things they were talking about. Was
real quick, going back to original numberings, quote, that alone, although it seems small.
So I just take me to downtown LA, give me a small bag of confetti. I'll just go, Wally West is alive!
And then run away.
And then the children will come back.
Even though most of the books are relaunching at number 1, the fact that Action and Detective are returning to their original numbers says something about the tone of what this is. Dan and Jim and myself are psyched that we're going to get to Action number 1000. But that alone, even though it seems small, I think it's a huge symbol of what we're trying to do. I realize that people will be skeptical. They've heard it before. They think they've read everything. I totally get that and appreciate and understand it. They should be skeptical. It's up to all of us to make our respective books worth your time and money. You mentioned Wally West. That's one of the big things that people are talking about, is that in a way of retconning, much like they did with New 52, of taking bits and pieces, it's taking bits and pieces of the legacy again. It almost seems like what they wanted to do is call this Convergence, but they couldn't because that event cost them like $7 million.
right.
It feels like it's sort of a converging of some of these pieces. Again, it's back to basics, which is a term they hate. Johns mentions it in the video. It's not something so simple as to say back to basics. It's a change in tone, which is opposite their recent DCU.
Yeah, but the DCU has been like, we want the writers to tell their own stories. And they tried it.
Yes, that's what he was talking about. Recently, they did this trend of this idea of DCU, YOU, and that it was an attempt to not worry as much about continuity and making sure that all the books were kind of on the same page as trying to get good stories no matter where they existed. And we got something like Titans Hunt, which is based off of the pre-New 52 Titans team.
Right.
And these characters sort of starting to remember this thing. That's been one of the rumors as well, is that this is a remembrance in that something happens in Flashpoint that makes the New 52 an overlay of the original DC universe. The original DC Earth 1
right,
or Earth X.
Yeah, that was one of the big mysteries that they set up for a while, because originally, going back, Flashpoint was never supposed to be used as a reboot. It was supposed to be an adventure story, big summer event. It was never meant to lead into let's hit the reset and start everybody over again. But then that was the hand was forced, and they turned it into that. And then going forward, there are mysteries to solve. What changed? Why couldn't Barry remember his friends the way they were? Why did some of them change personalities completely? What happened? And Convergence wasn't a good enough explanation, because all it was is like, oh, those universes still exist, just Earth 1 looks different for some reason, and Earth 2 for some reason.
So they're going to do a Dallas,
especially when Barry Allen is friends with Jay Garrick for almost 50 years, you don't redo the universe and go, I'm going to make him young and hip again. It's like, no, it was a weak explanation for why everything was different. It's like, Barry couldn't remember his friends. He couldn't remember his wife. He didn't remember the wedding of Lois and Clark. He didn't remember Green Arrow and Green Lantern. Two guys saving the people on the streets. And that eventually got lost in the story of the New 52s, because it's like, well, we've too far in. We can't really answer these questions anymore. And over the years, even characters like Booster Gold, who, like Doctor Who when Jeff Johns took over for him, was supposed to be completely immune to changes in the timeline and the universe.
Yeah, he had one of the most important stories right around
Right.
Flashpoint because he would see the differences.
Yes, he saw the differences, and then a couple issues in, they gave him amnesia, and he couldn't remember. And he was supposed to be the one who was like, "Why do you look different? What's going on?"
It's a Psycho Pirate.
So what do you think?
It was exactly the Psycho
The Psycho
Pirate.
Pirate post-Crisis was the only one that remembered the pre-Crisis universe.
Right, and they did that. Jeff Johns' 4-issue Power Girl story was him coming back to terrorize the people he remembered.
Yeah.
And trying to get them to, like...
So the rumor is that one of the options of it is in a sense of a retcon, is that we take the DC universe that existed until 2011 in terms of our Earth. And again, that universe didn't exist for 60 years because of all the different crises
Right.
that changed it. And what Flashpoint did is it just put an overlay on top of it, as if you took a sheet of paper, and this is the DC universe, and then a sheet of paper that has holes in it.
A transfer paper that said extreme.
Yeah, but more something almost like a coating,
Sure,
in
like-
like in a spy film where it's got different pieces cut out, is placed on top of it, and that when you place it on top of it, it removes Tim Drake as Robin. It removes some of the pieces of Green Lantern Corps. It removes who Mr. Terrific was to a certain degree. But there's still the essence of Tim Drake is in this because here's the holes in this piece of paper, this code that
How
you
did,
put
how
over
did
it.
Batman go through 4 Robins in
5 years?
Yeah, well, the biggest mistake they made was give it some
Battle
sort of time
World.
loop.
Battle World.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
well,
all
it was
it is,
my
too.
I mean,
It's-
as much as I hate being mean spirited, because of everyone at DC, Jeff Johns is the nicest person, and I think the person with the ear to the ground about how to modernize characters, because he did it many times over. He did it with Green Lantern Rebirth.
He did it in the
Flash
DC 52 with
he did it
Aquaman.
yes, he did it with 52 with Aquaman. And every time I look at, not all DC books. Like Starfire got canceled and made me really sad. But then you saw a character like Batgirl get taken over by Cameron Stewart and get completely trashed from a really well-meaning Gail Simone story that was trying to be very hard-hitting. And I feel like that moment in The Simpsons where all the designers are designing Poochie, and the last comment is, raise his cool by 30%, and the animator just takes a black marker and sketches on Ray-Ban sunglasses, and they're all like, perfect. And I feel like that's what the New 52 was just slap some sunglasses on him, give him a hip attitude, and you're going to get those kids. You're going to get that young, hip millennial market. And it didn't necessarily work.
So what do you
Not
keep
for
from the
long
new?
enough.
Not for long. No, not for long. That's not true. They had
Well,
great
Chris
sales
has been saying
the
it for
first
years.
year.
Is that the new 52 is going to be redone within a certain amount of timeline. I don't think I thought it was last this long. But what do you keep from the new 52 then? Because if you're going to add a new overlay or remove that code,
If you're going to start erasing things, what do you pull back? And that'll be what's interesting to see.
That's why everything's getting a Rebirth issue, one shot, because apparently that is going to help set up the universe.
because like
And
the Court
Johns
of
is
Owls-
writing.
Can Paul Dini write Harley Quinn's Rebirth?
Probably
Please,
not.
for love of God.
Johns has a huge hand in this. He seems to be basically the
The
editor in
architect
chief,
of
the
this.
architect of it. He's writing a lot of these rebirths. He's writing the DC Universe reboot issue that apparently is coming.
For
And
Marvel
it'll
fans, he's the
start
Joe
to
Quesada of DC.
No,
because
as much as I love Joe, DC,
Joe was a great editor. He didn't have a creative hand in these changes. He was helpful in picking creative teams, the characters, the books that would be released and stuff
Right.
like that. But he wasn't perfect. He was in it.
Joe,
in this case,
Joe saw how a lot of the pieces fit together. The way I best describe Jeff Johns is he was the young guy at DC, but he was also the guy who had a huge amount of respect for what legacy means
Sure.
to the characters.
Well, you get that in his writing too.
Yes, exactly, and that's I think like when I say something like 52 as a reboot sort of missed the mark because it was like let's just make these characters cool, legacy be damned. Then you have a huge segment of your market going. It's like you can have your cake and eat it too. Flash Rebirth, Green Lantern Rebirth is the way to modernize characters like Flash and Green Lantern, but give them the new edge they need.
See what you meant in the middle of that statement is sort of what a lot of characters lost in New 52 when you say legacy be damned. What I've said for the whole time with New 52 is the character that lost more than anything else was Superman.
Yes.
Because they took that placeholder of what Superman was, that god among gods. You have these characters who, half of the DCU superheroes, if they really wanted to, could break the world in half and throw it into the sun.
Sure.
And Superman could do it easier than anybody else. And yet, he didn't. And he was this, you all look up to him as this great and a great character, and then we'll put him in jeans and we'll let Grant Morrison write some story that is completely nonsensical. And then we'll also
a story
hamstring...
that he even admitted he did not want to write.
Exactly.
You're talking about the new 52
his action
action.
comics run, a run that he said he did
Those
not
pieces,
want to write.
the pieces were missing, and all of a sudden you realize this isn't a Superman that you really care about reading. Greg Pak's run tried to bring some of that back, but in a way, it's almost too late. You're too far into it.
Right.
You've got
Greg Pak
American
is not
Alien.
writing Superman. If Greg Pak is not writing Superman, they've done something completely wrong.
And even with Jeff and his run was really good, sort of bringing back those roots. But again, there's only so much you can get back. And that's American Alien is so good,
It's fantastic,
because it's the person who understands what legacy means while also bringing a youthful sensibility to the source material.
What do you
Yeah,
think
Landis
Jeff's
is a good
show. Yeah,
best
Max
character
Landis
is he writes?
What was that?
What do you think Jeff Johns' best character he writes?
That's a hard one because he's written so much. I mean, he can.
I love his Green Lantern.
I love his Green Lantern. I
Well, I think everybody loved
his
his
run
Green
on
Lantern.
Flash.
The last kind of bits of it, I thought he kind of petered out, but that's just me. And in terms of creative,
I mean,
sort of
his
thing.
Booster Gold run is fantastic.
Yeah,
When
he gets
did
a
52
good sense of getting to that kind of piece of the character and figuring out not only what makes it tick, but especially in his Aquaman run, going, I'm going to make fun of the idea that everyone makes fun of it.
That was brilliant. That
Yeah,
Aquaman.
and he does a great job with it. It's the right type of person to do this because he does care about that legacy and kind of brings back. What this flies in the face of is everything that they did with the new 52. This is basically, you can call this the old 52 or whatever you want. In terms of going back to legacy, that statement of, if you liked DC Comics before, this is everyone who left, please come back.
Right.
Please. But we don't know how to... The struggle with this is, how do we tell people who left, who are just not involved in comics anymore, that this is coming back?
So what about the rumors that DC was purposely doing this to try to make a more cohesive MCU or DCU?
I think,
And a
Jeff
comic
Johns'
book.
statement talks very much implies that they want cohesiveness again, especially when you look at the New 52 and you look at DCU, when you have characters like, it's like, well, is Tim Drake Robin or Red Robin? Some writers still refer to him as having been a Robin. Some writers didn't. You have
Those are problems, very early on. Gail
Simone
Simone admitted
Gail
it with
Simone's,
Firestorm.
Gail Simone's run even on Batgirl is very different than Cameron Stewart's, because they're just like, Cameron Stewart, do what you want, and then the book tanked after a couple months.
Well, when you look at the Flash TV show 2 weeks ago, when they introduced the multiverse, basically, and showed you glimpses of the different pieces, it made DC's universe, movie, television, comics, everything in between, all part of one cohesive multiverse.
Well, that's what the multiverse first was. The
And
multiverse
it
comes
works.
about. Well, the multiverse came about from this idea when they started telling. They were telling stories. It was one and done. So Batman would show up. He'd shoot some villain in the face, and then he'd die. And then the next issue, he's fine. Superman
Right.
would have crazy adventures. Then Marvel shows up and says, we've got one universe, and all these characters exist in the same thing, and they all have problems, and they all affect each other. If the Avengers have a fight in downtown New York, it affects Spider-Man because he can't go through Times Square or whatever.
Sure.
So DC's like, okay, well, now we're going to have this same sort of thing. And they started doing it. People were like, well, what happened about all these other characters? What happened to Superman
That
who
was on
couldn't
Earth,
fly?
whatever.
Exactly.
Right.
And then that became Earth 2. It's like, okay, Superman can't fly on Earth 2. He can jump. Because all of his early stories, he could
it
only
was the
jump. He
Golden
couldn't
Age.
fly.
Right.
That sort of thing. That's the way they tried to explain it.
And you're absolutely right. The purpose of the multiverse was to preserve legacy
Yes.
for the characters, because you could have, like, no, your Golden Age heroes did not die. They did not get erased. We respect you enough to actually keep them around. They're in Earth 2, and until somebody has an Earth 2 story to tell, they sit there. And then Jeff Johns comes with JSA. He brings about a lot of Earth 2 characters. He mixes them in. But then you have the New 52, which says, Golden Age heroes, that's for losers, man. You want hip heroes. We can't do gay heroes in the main universe. Guess what? You're getting a gay hero. You want a really diverse cast of characters? We're altering the Earth 2 characters. And
We'll make Connor Hawk into a white guy who looks like
right,
a Nazi.
we're gonna turn Connor Hawk into
We'll
a
turn
white
one of the
guy.
diverse of characters,
Yes, who's half
into-
Asian, half black.
half Asian, half black,
And turn him
raised in
into-
a
turn
Tibetan
him into-
monastery,
right.
and turn him into someone who
and
looks
turn him
like
into a ginger.
Hitler's super like, hey, this is
Right,
it.
Exactly. And that's one of those things where, again, like, you took the idea of legacy and said, legacy doesn't matter. This is the new Earth 2, when you could have easily gone, why isn't this Earth 67? Whatever.
Earth X,
Earth X.
So
or
you think
whatever
that
number
this
Earth-
means
Earth
that
swastika.
Especially when you look back at
Earth
the old
swastika?
Well, there's the one where the Nazis take over, so it's
Right,
always
there's
represented with a swastika.
the SS Superman. They did that in Multiversity.
Yes.
And that's the thing, is they said there's not an infinite multiverse. There's only 52 multiverses now. And you go, why? Why does that matter?
So do you think now that
Well,
we
let's
have
talk
the
about
death
50.
of the new 52, we'll start
Well, let's
seeing...
start with 52 though. There is an important point in this, in that there is not 52 titles. In fact, there's like 38.
Right.
I'm wondering.
Also, I do want to also close that. It's like, nothing against diversity, because I know that's a statement that can be easily misconstrued.
So
but
what,
it's-
you don't like gay,
No, I
black,
actually don't
homosexual-
mind it. But my problem is that you can easily
Some of his
do
best characters are gay.
you can easily do those characters in the main universe.
Sure.
And
Once it'll altering your character, come up with something new. That's
Right.
been an argument for a
and
while.
that's the main argument. I especially as a minority, I've always felt that you don't need to pander to me by taking characters I love and changing them. Just create new characters.
something new.
Yeah, it's the old thing with Kid Colt and Chuck Dixon, what he got in trouble for. It's like, don't take Kid Colt, who was always a straight character, and all of a sudden not only turn him gay, but the first issue has his gun, or instead of his penis. It
Well,
was come
look
up
at
with something
Iceman.
new, and then Iceman. We're not going to get into that. In terms of the numbers, it's not 52. There's something that's like 38, something around that. There's a part of me that's wondering and saying, well, okay, we want to cancel like 11 titles that are underperforming, and we really don't want to replace them, because every time they kept canceling titles, like, well, we're going to cancel 6 titles, but you're getting 5 new ones next month.
Right.
Well, we're going to cancel 4 titles, but you're getting 4 new ones next month. In this case, you're like, well, we're going to cancel 11 titles, but we're going to wrap it into this event with all new number ones that you're going to forget about the fact that we just dumped like a third of our or a quarter of our line, which is the right step, because there's just so much out there.
Yes.
And this is a chance for you to kind of close ranks and concentrate on having the best creators. In terms of creators, there's rumors all over the place of DC is reaching out to everybody, offering exclusive contracts again. Tim King signed an exclusive contract. He's the one who's been writing Grayson. We'll probably be writing Nightwing. Who knows?
Boy, I don't know what the TV shows are going to do. Every time that all the news channels and everything are all 52.
Yeah, they'll probably change it to the
38?
News 58. Or 38.
Channel
News-
38?
News,
Yes,
whatever.
because so we're all watching the cable news within the universe
Yes.
of DC.
Do you think that they're dropping those titles and not replacing it because it's a cost-cutting measure, especially with them going down to the $2.99 price
Possible.
point? They
It's
just say
entirely possible.
It's all possible, because you have to pay less creators, you have to pay less printing,
Yeah.
but it's also the fact that you get to the point where there's just simply too many titles. You can't keep your eyeballs on the titles that you have. You're fracturing your own audience that is interested in your product, but then stops and says, I can't get all of it, so I'm not going to get any of it. This is the old 90s X-Men thing. They kept expanding until the point where someone says, you know what, I can't keep up with all of it, so I'm not getting any of it. There's an interview like 2-3 years ago with C.B. Cebulski where he talked about that sort of thing. Is in terms of Marvel, you have a Spider-Man title, you have Amazing Spider-Man, and that's the main title, and everybody's on that. And then you have the next one, you have Peter Parker, and like okay, and then you have Webb, okay, and then there's less people reading that, and then you have Foes, and then you have Peter Parker goes to high school, and then you have Spidey's Adventures in the Multiverse.
Yeah.
And each layer has less and less readers, and there's a point where do we want to keep as many as we can by making sure that there's 6 titles out there that at least one person will be reading, or that a person will be reading at least one of them? Or do we just want to make 2 good titles that everybody who enjoys Spider-Man will read those 2 titles?
Right.
To hear, it seems like that. There are some strange ones in there. The fact that they're doing Earth 2 again seems odd to me.
Shouldn't you wait on that? Establish your new Rebirth universe. Then
Well, no, it's just the
slowly.
fact that Earth 2 has had 2...
Has two
as a
real-
title
has
has
it-
had two runs, and neither of them have been successful.
Right.
And
So-
it was also very confusing, especially as a guy who loves Golden Age characters. And then when I jumped into Earth 2, I really liked James Robinson's first few issues. But then it became after James Robinson left, they did stuff with Mr. Terrific, one of my favorite superheroes, pre-New 52. And then they tried to match his character to the pre-New 52 version, but he was still kind of like Kanye West, who was also Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Kanye West is 50% better than Mr. Terrific.
No,
50% better than Superman.
And
50% better than
and they
Batman.
They tried to tone
50% better than Wonder Woman.
50% more
By
influential.
50%. By 50%.
So, anyways,
And it's one of those things like they did this weird thing where he was trapped there and he could never find his way back. But then they also did this weird thing with Huntress and Power Girl trying to get back, and then they wanted to stay there. And then they did the convergence where their Earth was destroyed, and then they found another planet they could live on.
Yes.
And
But
it's
here's
like,
the thing.
What?
So this is what, in terms of going forward. Now, for you, you weren't reading a lot of... Let's go back to New 52. Before the New 52, you were not reading a lot of DC Comics.
correct.
You bought a ton of New 52 number ones.
Yes, I did.
You dropped off month after month here and here, but you stayed pretty steady for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Is this something that you look at when you look at that list of titles, and just the list of titles, not the creative teams or whatever, look at it and go, I can see myself getting back into 5, 6, 7, 8 books.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
For Ethan, you weren't collecting anything.
Well, that
Supergirl here and there,
well-
Batman Eternal, whatever.
Well, I think when New 52 first came out, that was before I started.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. In
collecting
terms of, I'm just talking right now.
Yeah.
Someone like you that's not collecting anything regularly from DC.
Mhm.
Is this the type of event that for you go, you know what? There's a couple of these that I would give a shot for.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously like the Batman titles. I know with Supergirl returning, I'd start picking up Supergirl again. Yeah.
You're not buying physical stuff anymore,
No,
really.
I'm reading
But is there
digital.
something in it you look at it, especially once creative teams I think get announced? That might be
Especially
something
once
for
creative
you.
team
where
gets
it's gonna
announced.
make a
That's
difference.
where-
Yeah,
that's
but I'm
where
just in
I'll-
terms of thing. You would see maybe picking up a couple of these. Sort of things.
I would, especially with once creative teams are announced, because like my first instinct is always like, okay, who are my favorite characters and are they coming back? I just mentioned Mr. Terrific. If Mr. Terrific got another number one, then I would go, okay, I got burned the last time I got a Mr. Terrific book.
You and everybody else.
Yeah, and it's like
Your
it's like-
Mr. Terrific is my Green Arrow.
Right. It's especially it's like as a guy who connected to Mr. Terrific when he was in Jeff Johns' JSA run, and even the Mr. Terrific before that. I'm going to use him as an example. Like I got burned on the last Mr. Terrific series. I got burned with him in Earth 2, and I go like, if they were to say, hey, Mr. Terrific's getting another number one, I would go, okay, who's the creative team on that?
Yeah.
And that's my feeling for a lot of these books, where I go,
But the point is, more of my point is that you would kind of dive back in.
Yeah.
Likely.
yes.
Mike, you and I have both like cut it down to like 2 titles or 3 titles.
I was getting a decent amount before New 52, and then New 52
Yeah.
came out, and I got half of them, and it kept on whittling,
Whittling.
until now I'm just getting the tail end of
Like
Justice League and Batman. And after this, I'm probably not going to pick up any more DC.
Okay, so there's Mikey's the outlier because something like this, because I
But
have the
it's
same
not
thing.
even a
with-
matter of this. I'm also whittling down my big 2.
No, I
because they're
understand
not-
that, but I'm just
Yeah.
in terms of the fact that this doesn't excite you, whether you're whittling it down
Oh,
or
yeah.
not. It's not something that you go, all right, this is where I'll get back in or whatever.
Nothing's-
For someone like me, I've got 4 DC titles or whatever,
Oh, yeah.
hanging on to Green Arrow for some reason. I don't know why. Starfire, Batman, and Gotham Academy. Probably the
Batman
only-
would be the only one that I would possibly hang on to,
Well, you
just for
probably
the
move
fact
the
of
detective if it's Snyder. Or
It's also
no,
tough
no,
for
just
me,
because
too.
I've had Batman.
Yeah.
Have all 400s and
Right.
It's tough because
600.
I'm
But the
still
point,
on.
the point I'm trying to make here is, out of a room of 5 people, there's 4 of us that are saying this makes us want to kind of go grab this sort of thing. That's why they do this.
Right.
Sure.
And
No,
I'm willing to
obvious
check it
why
out,
they
but
do
I'm also feel spoiled because I pay for Marvel Unlimited, and
Right.
I can read just about every Marvel book under the sun. I just got to wait a couple months.
No, I understand. It's just in terms of like a general
Yeah.
sort of thing.
But
When
no,
people is
I-
like, why? And Marvel has proven this that if you reboot, your titles in terms of a reboot instead of remaking, we're talking about reboots and starting with new numbers, new creators, new stories. Marvel's proven that this sort of theory works.
right.
Well, I don't think
If
anyone.
we had more time, we'll get back. We could get into Eric Stevenson's address to Comics Pro this year, which was just as controversial as last year's, except he didn't yell at the retailers as much as he yelled at himself in terms of the short-sightedness of what they're doing. But that's why they do this.
Well,
And-
I don't think anyone in the room doesn't disagree why they do it.
No, I'm just
It's
pointing.
just that-
I'm pointing it out in terms of the
It's an
listener,
inconvenient truth.
where the listener's like, why do they keep doing this? This is it. You
Right.
can't- It's almost like a misnomer of, in order for DC to get back to legacy, they have to start over,
Sure.
and that's kind of just.
But
where we leave
it's
it.
kind of my thing with Cap. Where you keep
as long as
doing
the black guy doesn't have the
you
shield,
keep no,
we're
you
fine.
keep doing the same thing over and over again. What's the point of reading it? I mean, I get it's a new character. There's new stories, but I've seen it. I've done it.
That's kind of where that's kind of where we differ though. Is like I go like I don't mind someone like
Mike, you're not on the mic.
I don't mind someone
Like
like
is the-
Jaime Reyes taking over for Blue Beetle because they didn't make Ted Kord Hispanic.
No, they just shot him in the face.
They created even that I don't mind. It's just they created a
wow,
brand
what do you have against Ted Kord, man?
I just don't. For me, it's one of those things like no. The thing about Legacy is that's what makes Legacy interesting. Someone like the Flash having literally a family, it became from Barry to Wally, Jay Garrick later on.
Well, so that's always the other thing for me because when I got into my like entry into the DC universe as a whole was Morrison's JLA, and so my Green Arrow was Connor. My my Green Lantern is Kyle, and my Flash is Wally. And I was not happy when any of them came back.
Right.
I was like, I don't want those other characters. I want to keep going with these
I
guys.
totally understand that. And that sort of speaks to the bigger conversation of, like, legacy matters to a lot of people because DC used to have a wide range of characters, and some would disappear and some would come back. But in the end, there were always new iterations of the characters.
Yeah.
There were new,
One is
there were
DC
new
is
iterations
successful-
of the heroes
Yeah.
with new characters. They weren't new iterations of the same
And
characters.
they're the only one that were able to do it. And the
Right.
fact of having you took three major parts of your universe in Flash, Green Lantern, and Green Arrow, and had brand new people take them over for long runs
really
that
long
people-
stretches of time.
No one else has been able to do that.
No, and
in any way,
they
shape,
did
or
it
form.
successfully. And then when it's like, well, we're it no longer is making a new Flash good enough. You got to change Barry,
Yeah.
or you got to change Wally, or you got to change Jay, and that cuts into a lot of people who liked specific versions of those characters. I use Flash as an example because Flash has a lineage that you can trace as a character through all of DC's history.
He's probably the most
So,
important.
so
DC.
And he
you're
is.
totally against Black Wally West?
I'm not against Black Wally West, but he's not.
Quit trying to find allies.
Yeah, you're
All right, just because you don't like Sam Wilson because he's a member
I
of
love Falcon. I
See,
love
here's
the
the
character
thing.
of the Falcon.
Sure you do. As long as he keeps his place as Captain America's sidekick, right?
No, I don't.
As long as he's off on the side,
I
he does
never
not wear the
felt
red,
he
white,
was
and
a
blue.
sidekick.
Here's the thing: the Wally West in the New 52 is not Wally West. He is a completely new character.
Sure.
And if he had a different name and was the Flash's new sidekick, I guarantee he would have been welcomed with open arms by many, many people because he would have been a new addition to the Flash family. Instead, they took a character who not only had the name of the Flash for more
Right.
than a decade, but was also just in Justice League Unlimited as an incredibly popular character. They may be using the previous version of Wally West in their DC film universe to avoid reusing Barry because he's in the TV show. And that's when I go, it's like, oh, good, Wally West is coming back. Who's this guy? This isn't really Wally. I can't fall in love with this guy because he's not really Wally West. He's a completely new character who, if they had gone, oh, this is Jolly
West.
Jest, I would have gone, oh, Jolly Jest is pretty cool. I like his story and what they want to do with him. But when you try and spoon feed me to him as this is Wally West, I go, like, this isn't Wally West. He's not a little ginger who's, spry and very happy. No, where's his children? Where's that great Mark Waid run spirit? I go, this is not the character I fell in
Hey,
love with.
G.I. Joe tried to do it with Ripcord.
He's just a little ginger.
Yeah, the old Wally West and the little ginger kid.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking about the new one. I was like,
No.
that's not a little ginger. What are you talking about?
Hey, G.I. Joe, the first movie,
So
did the
that's
same
the
thing with Ripcord.
Yeah, they try that. But no, it's the same thing with, Falcon becoming Captain America is a great idea. And for the story they were telling...
Not according to Rich.
It's not.
Yeah, shame on you, Rich. Again, it was the same thing like Bucky. And I understand the fatigue of replacing a character with another
Look, if it
character
would've
that had a
happened 10
separate
years-
identity. I can understand the fatigue from that. But
If
for the
it had
story they were
happened
telling,
10
it
years
made
from
sense.
now, if it had happened 10 years from now, I would have been more eased into it.
Takes him a while to get the
Shut
racism
up.
out of his system.
No, it's just that I felt like it just
That,
happened.
honestly, go back and listen to that episode. It's one of the best episodes we've done.
It's very easy to find. I'm not a
It
racist.
just goes through, and I'm like, wait. And it just break it down piece by piece and just ends with me going, so your problem with it is because he's black.
And
it was
can't-
fantastic.
It's one of those things. I can't speak for Ethan, but I mean, I'm Hispanic. I'm half Brazilian, half Puerto Rican. Ethan is also a minority, and I can't speak for your own experiences, but as someone who read comics for
Ethan's
almost
part of a sleeper cell. That's Chris.
all of my entire
Saturday.
life, I I've never needed characters who look like me or act like me or share the same cultural background as me. I've always said it. Mr. Terrific, if we're going to go beyond the A-list here, is Mr. Terrific, Power Girl, my two favorite superheroes outside of, Superman and Green Lantern.
Do you think it's more segregation than not by creating those characters like that? I mean,
I'm asking you to rephrase the question, mostly because I don't maybe
Okay.
I didn't receive the...
Here. Let me give you an example.
Sure.
The Oscars right now.
Sure.
There's a lot of talk about how there's not a lot of African American nominees.
Okay. Yep.
And some people believe that there should be their own African American within the community, that community, believe that there should be a special Oscar for them. To me, I believe that's more of a segregation than an inclusion.
But that comes down to why just black people? Why not Middle Eastern people? Why not
Right.
Asian people? What everybody gets cut out of these things, and so
Right.
like now if you do it for African American people, you're gonna have to do it for
Right.
Middle Eastern people and Asian people and
Because
so
that's
on and so forth.
I don't have a dog necessarily in that fight. I will say that
It's like having BET. You don't have WET.
right.
You don't have
I understand the arguments.
AET.
I understand the arguments, and especially when I look at something like the Oscars as a meritocracy, which is very different than representation is very different than meritocracy. If those are the people that made it on lists and those are the vote, you can also go into sort of like, okay, who's voting in the Oscars? How many people really pay attention? There's a lot to it than that. So I understand the similarities, but from a comics perspective, when it's really more storytelling, that's kind of different than that. I see the arguments on both sides, and I understand the arguments on both sides. I'm a guy who goes like, look, if you did good enough, you gotta, and you didn't get recognized, I totally understand the burn there.
But doing something for the sake of diversity,
you can also get into arguments like what the diversity numbers and population breakdowns and stuff like that. There's a lot there, but especially in comics, there is a big push for diversity, and I understand why there is a group of people who want it. But what I won't understand are the people who want it by any means necessary.
Well, that's what I mean. Is
There's an organic
doing
to
something,
it,
yes,
yeah.
I've always
doing something for diversity for the sake of diversity doesn't seem to.
It's
to me,
agendizing.
Yes.
Yes, it is agendizing, and it doesn't help anybody because then you get characters who aren't really in touch with the audiences you want. I'm going to use Batgirl as a reference now because the Batgirl book under Cameron Stewart has been labeled very much, a book for social justice warriors by social justice warriors. And if you're like me and spend a lot of time on the internet, you all know what I'm talking about, and you all know about how insufferable those people can be. And if you were reading Batgirl, how insufferable of a character she became, because I see that book as, yeah, sure, there was a lot of diversity pushing for the sake of diversity pushing, and the story took huge sacrifices to meet those demands and became a book that I couldn't even read. And I'm a guy who loves, the old Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams, Green Arrow, Green Lantern run, where he's, basically, like an ultra liberal running around the streets pointing the finger and the blame at everybody, because they make for really great issues, and those are issues you can address in comics without hitting people in the face with a sledgehammer like Batgirl tried to do. And then the book's numbers took a huge dip because the stories did not end up saving that book.
Right. Well, Kris mentioned doing something
But
more organic. Miss Marvel is a perfect example.
Miss Marvel
of that.
is a perfect example of a really organically evolving book about a minority character that is not sacrificing story to tell the story they want to do.
Right.
They are using, she's a Pakistani Muslim living in New York City. She gets superpowers. And
it's not taking it's taking an existing character,
And
but not being that
right,
existing character.
they didn't change Carol Danvers. They created a new character. But for someone
by organically changing Carol Danvers as well to make her Captain Marvel in such a great way.
They evolved Captain. They evolved.
I mean, that thing
Carol
goes all the way
Danvers.
back to Civil War when she decides that she wants to.
There's some static coming in now.
Yes, there is.
There's a lot of static.
It's
coming.
probably us telling us that it's time to wrap things up.
Right.
We like Carol. We like Carol.
Yeah,
Keep
I love
going.
Carol. I love Kamala Khan as Miss Marvel, and I'm sad her book even took heavy dips. Maybe there's got to be interference coming. From somewhere.
There's interference coming from something.
But no, I mean, hopefully this doesn't get bad. But for me, like I've always said, Mr. Terrific is a character I identified with. I'm not black. I'm Hispanic. I'm Latino. But Mr. Terrific appealed as a character to me because he's a science nerd, and so am I. As a kid, I always excelled in science. So for me, having a character like that, yeah, is bad.
So okay, so we're gonna wrap things up because it's getting very staticky here. We've like hit a
headphones on.
we've hit a like some kind of storm. It's a solar flare. It's coming in, you know. So we're going to wrap things up. You check us out on Facebook.com/Nerdables. At Twitter, we're on @NerdableShow, and check us out anywhere else you want to hear us. We will talk to you soon.